So, welcome to another edition of the Believers Breed podcast. I'm so excited. We have a very special guest today. And again, this podcast is designed to encourage people to embrace self-awareness, self-confidence, and self-worth. And, what better way to do that than the very special guest that we have here today, the always fly and beautiful J Renee. So,
Hi.
we are glad to have you here today. And for the very few people in the world that don't know who J Renee is, introduce yourself.
Well, my name is J Renee. I am an author. I am a speaker. I am a serial entrepreneur, CEO of the Visionary Academy, which is an online training and resource center for creatives, visionaries, and entrepreneurs, and also the owner of Boutique J Renee, which is an online women's clothing store.
Good deal. So we're gonna talk a little bit about a lot of the things that you do. You talked about being a serial entrepreneur, and so that means that you got your tentacles kind of in a lot of places. I want to know where all of this started. So I think that people see J Renee, but it had to start somewhere.
Right.
Where did all of this begin?
Well, it actually began many years ago. At the age of 12, my oldest brother brought me a book called How to Become a Teenage Millionaire. I grew up in a family where we believed in education, we believed in HBCUs, but I didn't really grow up in an entrepreneurial family. Everything that I was taught was the traditional, go to college, get an education, work a job, and that's it. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but that was all I was exposed to. But at the age of 12, my oldest brother brought me a book called How to Become a Teenage Millionaire, and the book basically chronicled the lives of people that started their businesses as teenagers and became millionaires, or actually became millionaires before the age of 20.
Wow.
And there was a story that really, really got me, which is the story of a guy that had $1,000 loan. He wanted to go to medical school and he didn't have the money, so he took a $1,000 loan from a family friend, and he used that to start a sub business at the time when like hamburgers, french fries, pizza was the thing. Long story short, that $1,000 turned into the largest restaurant chain in the world, which at the time it was the largest restaurant chain in the world, and that was Subway. Fred DeLuca started Subway when he was 18.
That's crazy.
So and he started with $1,000. So when I read that, I was like, okay, I'm 12. I don't really know what I'm gonna do, but I know I have to do this. And from there, my wheels started turning. One thing that I understand with people that are visionaries, we think like this. When I say that, I mean, like you said, our tentacles go in all these different directions. And I knew that there were a lot of different things that I wanted to pursue. So it began with me just grabbing the lowest hanging fruit, using what I had access to at the time. My first business plan was a lawn care company. But no, I never executed it.
Okay.
Because I'm a girly girl and all that stuff is nasty. But at the age of 12, I was like, what can I do legally, So eventually that morphed into, once I went to TSU, I started doing hair. That was the lowest hanging fruit. That was what I had access to at the time. I used the money from doing hair in my dorm to launch my first business, used that money to launch my second business, used that money to launch my third, and then from there it just kept going. But one thing I always tell people is to grab the lowest hanging fruit. A lot of times we see the big thing and we're like, how in the world can I make that happen? And it literally started for me just starting with what I had, the talent that I had, and just continuing to evolve from there.
Wow. So a lot of the things that you do now are related to visionary. And so you have your book entitled True Confessions of a Visionary. You have the Visionary Academy. And you also just mentioned it just now that that book kind of allowed you to hone in on those visionary skills.
Right.
Do you think that being a visionary is something that's innate, that God just puts in us? Or is this something that comes through self-education? Like, what is a visionary? Like, what does that look like for you?
So I definitely believe that it's kind of one of those things that you're born with. I believe the big difference between visionaries is that you have people who have insight towards the future, and I believe that there's a whole nother group of people that are responsible for creating it. I believe visionaries are people who have the insight and the responsibility.
Wow.
So some people think like this. They see a career path, they see an idea, they see, a dream. And then you have people that think like this. A visionary just doesn't see what's in front of them. They see what's beside them, what's above them, what's beneath them, what's around them. And so, like I said, I do believe that's something that's a God-given talent. A lot of people that are visionaries usually struggle with focus. They struggle with, a lot of times, with discouragement because they feel like, where do I start? I don't know how to do this. They struggle with being misunderstood because people don't understand how their brains work. They struggle with lack of support because a lot of us are in spaces where, like me, we don't come from families or around people, or we're not around people that think the way that we do. So we think that, okay, oh, we're just all over the place. Oh, I'm just scatterbrained. Oh, I got ADHD, whatever. When in all actuality, I believe that it's a mild form of genius. Everybody doesn't have the ability to think like that. And so as I really began to figure out that I'm not crazy, I'm not, I'm not bad, because I was one of the people in school. I mean, I never did my work, but I felt like I was smarter than half my teachers. I probably was. But there's not anything wrong with me. Like, this is a God-given skill. It just is one of those things that it takes very intentional direction. And my dad was a visionary. And I thank God that as I got older, I was able to appreciate, oh, this is why he thought like this. This is why he acted like this. This is why he moved like this. And now I feel like I have the responsibility to help other people understand, like, you're really a genius. You don't understand it yet, but Jeremy, you're really a genius. You think like, oh, it's just this. No, you're a genius.
Gotcha. So focus was something that you just hit on, and I think that's hard for people that have that creative genius, is remaining focused, especially right now, because when one thing doesn't work, it's like you want to jump to the next thing really quickly and not really understanding, like, you got to spend a lot of time with it. And so you said it started with hair for you in a dorm room on the campus of Tennessee State University. Talk about that journey into the salon, and what skills did you gain from that interaction?
So one thing I always say, and I'm not just saying this because I went to TSU. Tennessee State University is one of the greatest schools of all time. I support HBCUs, period, largely because you have a situation where you kind of have the cream of the crop all coming to the same place. A lot of us come from places where we're minorities, and then we make it to the top of a very small situation, and then you come to an HBCU, and you are like, it's the cool kids from all the schools. It's the best athletes from all the schools. So it's not significant to be talented. It's not significant to be attractive. It's not significant to dress nice, because everybody does.
Everybody, yeah.
So being in a place like that, I always say I got an honorary doctorate in hustling at TSU. Because I learned how to really develop a competitive edge. I learned how to stand out in a place where everybody was gifted, everybody was intelligent. And so I started, again, the lowest hanging fruit at the time for me was doing hair. There was a need, even though there was tons of girls that did hair, I recognized a need, and I found the holes. I was like, if I do this, I can do this. Next thing you know, clientele was booming for me, and I was like, I need to go ahead and do what I need to do to get my license. I got my license, and when I went into the salon, I began with the end in mind. I always knew this is not where I want to stop, but this is the lowest hanging fruit right now. This will give me money to get to where I'm trying to go without, getting into debt. So probably the biggest thing that I learned was not even so much something specific to that industry, but it was just a good practice in business. That, and I was just telling somebody this on the way here, actually, there's no such thing as an oversaturated market. People think that it's so many people that don't get into things because they focus on saturation, when in all actuality, saturation should never be your focus. The demand should. If there's no shortage of the demand, there's no reason for you to be concerned about saturation. And that's something that I really learned in the beauty industry. It doesn't matter what industry I get into, as long as there's a demand and there's no shortage in the demand. It doesn't matter if it's 1 million restaurants, people are always eating. It doesn't matter if there's a million books, people are always reading. It doesn't matter if it's a million doctors, people get sick every day.
Yeah, right.
You know, so that was probably the most valuable lesson that I learned and I've taken through everything that I've done.
So I like to think about my relationship with my barber like this love-hate relationship, because I think that it's very awkward when you think about it in a normal sense of sitting in a chair and allowing someone to touch one of the most intimate parts of your body, which is your head.
Right.
And so I find myself sometimes like looking face to face with my barber, and it's like, you know, do I look him in the face? Do I close my eyes? You know? So it's really
Especially
awkward.
for men.
Yeah, it's real awkward. So, you know, talk about your experiences with having women in your chair or men in your chair, and what that time allowed you to do, and how you were able to learn like pacing with conversations, how you were able to learn like interpersonal relationships, and being able to take that time where you have with the person and allow them to forget everything else that's going on in the world and focus on like, this is my sanctuary right now.
Well, like I said, this particular industry really laid the groundwork for everything that I do, largely because of that. The greatest thing that I learned was the power of influence. An old hairstylist, well, she's not old, but an older hairstylist told me when I first started that the three most important people in a woman's life, her man, her gynecologist, and her hairstylist. That's who she trusts more than anything. And she was like, if somebody trusts you with their vanity, don't take that lightly. And that made me think and approach what I did totally different. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just trying to get your money and get you out of my chair, you know, but I really began to focus. And when I first started, I didn't understand all of that, but as I grew and as I matured, I realized the value, not just of relationships, but of client retention. Because you don't always have to be looking for new people if you're still keeping the people that are coming. That's
true.
The people that are, and that's something, always remember, if you're looking for somebody, if somebody's always looking for new customers, that means it's a lot of people going, people aren't staying. They shouldn't always be looking for new people. So if they always running specials, they always trying to, that's a bad sign.
Telltale sign, yeah.
So, but I realized the power of influence. And I realized that when I first started, again, I had the end in mind. I thought, you know I'm not gonna stay in this, but I didn't realize how much I was really gonna be able to grow my brand and really expand until I began to realize how much influence I had over those women. And I was ready to quit long before I actually did. And I had got to the point where I was like, I don't even want to do this anymore. I feel like I'm stuck. Much like a lot of people feel when they get in corporate situations or they have jobs, even though I was self-employed, I was like, I don't want to do this no more. I feel like I'm going to work. Like, I'm ready to be done. I feel like this is taking my time. I can't invest in my passions, the things I really want to do. And I prayed and I was like, God, I was at the point where I wasn't having to advertise anymore. I had full clientele. And I was like, you know what, God, if I'm still doing this these last couple years, I don't want anybody in my chair that you don't send me. And I was like, if they sit in my chair, I know that there's a reason beyond me just doing their hair. Like, this is not even about, me trying to lay somebody's weave out anymore. I know that my purpose and my focus is so much bigger than that right now.
Right.
So I don't want nobody in my chair that's here just to get a fix. And from there, like I said, I stopped advertising altogether. I didn't send no emails. I didn't post no pictures, anything. And people just kept coming. And as the people would come, I would have conversations about business. I had women going through divorces, infertility, miscarriage, everything that you can think of a woman going through. In those last couple of years I was doing hair, I ended up like really, not even necessarily coaching, but praying people through, counseling people through. We had good laughs. A lot of those people who, they were my clients in the hair industry, they've been my clients in other regards. They've supported the Visionary Academy. They've bought clothes from me. They're people that have continued, and I've kept relationship with them. And that's a powerful thing in branding. A lot of times people think because of the fact that you start a new business that you need new customers. But if you do people right in the first endeavor, they'll travel with you.
They'll travel. That's good.
And so, bringing that all in, I really just learned the power of influence. And, if you develop a trust with people, if you are a good steward over what people trust you with, they'll support you in everything.
Wow, that's good to know. So, in regards to growing that brand, so now you are J Renee. It's linked to your boutique. In the past, it was linked to hair. It's the Visionary Academy. It's the books. What's the most important part about growing that brand and remaining authentic to who you really are? Because I think so often now people are looking to grow their brand, but they're not doing it in an organic space. And it's more about more followers. It's more about more likes. But how did you remain true to who you are and make sure that it was authentic?
My biggest thing was consistency. And at the foundation of my brand, I established 3 core values that have gone into every single thing that I've done. That was inspiration, transformation, and motivation. So if you were my hair client, you experienced that with me. If you did a one-on-one business consultation through the Visionary Academy, you experienced that with me. If you read one of my books, you experienced that with me. If I spoke at your conference, you experienced that with me. And even, if you bought some clothes for me, by the time you put it on, you was like, whoo,
I'm motivated.
who is she? So those consistent values, my first business, phase one image consulting, I would work with people on establishing brand. And this was years ago, 9 years ago when I started doing this. And to this day, these are 3 things that I always tell people. Develop those 3 core values. If you want to have a lifestyle brand, meaning you want to be able to branch out into other things, develop those core values and take them with you no matter what you do. And that was one thing that was very important to me. That's really what a brand is. Your brand is not what you put out, it's what people say about you. So when those things are consistent, that's when you've really built a powerful brand. And that was what was important to me. I want that consistency in everything that I do, no matter what J Renee's name is on. If she's on it, then this is what's gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? And even different facets of the brand may have its own particular attributes, but I wanted those things to be consistent. So when I talk about people traveling with you, that's what gets people to commit to a brand. You know what I'm saying? We know no matter what Bad Boy puts out, we know if Diddy's on it, it's gonna be a good time.
Right.
We know it's gonna feel good. We know it's Black excellence. Whether it was Ciroc, whether it was Sean John, whether it was a concert, whether it was a new album, we knew that was gonna be the core, So that's what I've just really tried to do, keep those things consistent.
Okay. And so you talked about taking the money from hair, reinvesting it to your next business venture. And so in following you on social media, I see that you're trying to really educate people on the importance of investing, ownership. Talk about the financial journey and really understanding how to monetize one business, but use it to take that next step into what you want to do. Because everybody talks about they have aspirations, but the one hang up that I see across the board is like, I don't have the money.
Right. Well, the biggest thing is that the whole I don't have the money thing is a myth. If you get a paycheck, you have money. The problem is I had posted something on my Visionary Academy page the other day, and it was a quote that basically said, your salary doesn't make you rich, it's your spending habits. You can do whatever you want to do with your money, you know what I'm saying? But it's just a matter of what's important to you. And for me, I think when many people that follow me know, you may not know this, but my dad died when I was 17. And this was right before I went to college, so life got real to me very fast. My mom was, putting 2 kids through college, and even though, she was the super mom, I'm gonna make sure y'all are straight, I started to feel bad, and I felt a burden because I didn't want my mom to be like working herself crazy trying to put us through school. So when I was 19, I moved off campus, got my first apartment. Life got real then. Money got real then. A lot of people don't feel the weight of money until they understand responsibility.
True.
And so I understood responsibility at a young age. So that made me just kind of start to look at everything differently. I started reading and studying. One thing I always tell people, probably the biggest hole in our generation is the fact that we don't read books. It's becoming cooler now because people do it on Instagram. But people got rich and then wrote books about it. They told you exactly how they did it. So why would we not take the cheat sheets? So I had a very clear vision for how I wanted my life to be. I was like, I can't work like this all my life. So what do I need to do to, just make some things happen? So I started studying real estate. I started studying people, like really wealthy people. And one person that I started paying attention to early on was Dave Ramsey. And Dave Ramsey is somewhat of an extremist.
He is.
But he's like anti-debt everything. And as an entrepreneur, I realized once I started to understand concepts of like net worth, which we don't talk about that because most people are worth negative a bunch of zeros. We don't even, that's not even a conversation we have, especially not in our community, because we die in debt. But once I started understanding the concept of net worth and where your assets versus how much you owe, and I had wandered on something on Bank of America. I looked at my net worth and I put in like my student loans. It was like negative, yada. I was like, I'm not worth anything. I was like, I want to be worth something. So I was probably about 20 then. I was like, you know what? I'm determined to have more money on this side than on this side. You know what I'm saying? I want to have more than I owe. And so once I made that decision, I started looking. And of course, I'm looking at these big dreams that seem impossible. I want to have a salon. I want to have a boutique. I want to do all this stuff. And I'm a college student. You know what I'm saying? What can I do? And I was like, you know what? Let me work backwards. And I talk about this in my book. Start at the biggest thing and work down and get down to the absolute smallest step possible. I got down to the absolute smallest step possible. Well, when I get some money, I can get a logo. The next week, when I get some money, I'll put this into my website. The next week, when I get some more money, I'll do a photo shoot. You know what I'm saying? And that was how I learned how to take step by step to get to where I'm trying to go. And then beyond that, years later, after I had built a lot, I was doing well, owned a home, had multiple businesses, everything was doing great. All of a sudden, I get into a car accident. And that's one of those things that, again, we feel invincible until life happens. And I felt invincible. Like I'm young, I'm making good money, I'm straight. Well, one day I'm on my way to a Christmas party, get into a car accident, and I can't work full time for almost 6 months.
Wow.
Like I took, the financial hit I took was the size of a full-time salary. The only reason why I survived is because of the fact that I had multiple streams of income and there were things that I had put my money into that I could pull from, But even in that, if 6 more months, you probably be interviewing somebody else, but that made me realize like, we're not invincible. You know what I'm saying? All these little fast money schemes that people doing on Instagram, that stuff could be gone tomorrow. And especially when you're in a service-based industry, anything that requires your body, your presence is dangerous.
Right.
So I was like, I need to have my money in some places where I don't have to do
I ain't
nothing.
gotta be there.
And so from there, investing and really just beginning to plan for the future, which the people that are retiring at 40, they started when they were 20, That's why I was just like, you know what, I got to do this. Got a financial planner who also went to Tennessee State. Got a financial planner and just really began to set things up in a way that's going to protect me in the long run. And like I said, I know most people my age, our age, they're not thinking about that.
Right.
So that's why I've really just tried to use my platform and my influence to really educate people and let them know, look, like today, you could just be minding your business and somebody smack you, life can happen and, you got to be prepared.
Wow, that's good. And she was referencing, she was in a car accident on the way here, but she's here. She's here. One thing I want to hit on before we're done is the people around you. And so we see J Renee, but I'm sure there are a lot of moving pieces that are happening behind the scenes, a lot of support that you've received from people. But at some point, you had to understand, I need to bring this person with me, but that person has to go. So as people that are trying to make accomplishments, entrepreneurs, growth in the organization, the marriage, whatever it is, how important is it to understand the people around us and how we should move them kind of like chess pieces?
move them like chess pieces. I am a firm believer that your environment will make you or break you. And many people are stuck in the place that they're in largely because of the fact that they're not around people that challenge them. And it's not that they don't know those people don't challenge them, it's that they're scared to be alone. But I learned at a very young age how to be alone, how to do things alone, how to get things done alone. I recognized as a kid, even though my parents used to tell me all the time, you're not like everybody else, you're not like everybody else, everybody's like, you're different, you're different. And I heard it, but there was a moment, I think I was probably like 16, 17, where I began to realize, okay, I am different. This was after I had really, I was really starting to see and get an idea for the future. And the people that I was around, they weren't thinking anything about it. So I had a choice at that point, do I want to do me or do I want to be cool? I still ended up being cool. I just did me. But, like I said, I realized at a very young age that if I want to get this done, I'm going to have to do it by myself. Even when it came to me aggressively going after my dreams, I started my first business when I was 21. Most of my friends were still in college. Most of my friends were still, kicking it, having a good time, and I was launching out. I did it by myself, So, like I said, I recognized very early on that either I can kind of blend in and make everybody feel good around me, or I can go get it by myself. And that's what I've done, and that's what I try to encourage people to do. It's really not lonely at the top. It just might be people up there that you're not used to. And you can't be afraid of moving around a different type of people. So I'm a firm believer that you are the sum total of the 5 closest people around you. Your mate, your best friend, the people that you talk to every day. And now I can think of 2 people, 3 people, count my mama, that I talk to like heavily, you know what I'm saying? But I still have people that check in, people that make me feel uncomfortable when I get to complacent spaces, and that's really necessary. I'm not, a lot of people just really get dramatic. Like you feel like you got to make announcements. You got to tell people, I'm done with you. I'm moving on. Like you don't have to do all of that. When you move different, people gonna feel it.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? And I've experienced the good of that, where people were inspired and wanted to come with me. I've experienced the bad of that, where people were jealous and they tried to tear me down. But in all of it, I've made up my mind that I'm going to grow regardless of what happens. So like I said, I just try to encourage people, don't be afraid to do it by yourself, because that's usually what holds people back. And I believe in the time of the internet, regardless of where you live, regardless of what country, city you in, what kind of friends you feel like you do or don't have, I got some friends that ain't never met me in my life. I'd be like, let me see what she doing today. Oh, that new business? Oh, that's great. Me and Oprah been like this for years. She don't know it yet. Diddy's my mentor. He don't know it yet either. But those are the types of things that I stimulate my brain with. Like, I'm not gonna sit up here and kiki and haha about Bubba that ain't making no money. I don't care,
You're right.
But don't be afraid to do it alone. That's my biggest thing.
And I think you have this good balance of like what I like to call righteous and ratchet. And I think that you mentioning being amongst people at the top that are a little different from what you're accustomed to, I think that you handle it well. Why is it important for you to be able to jam to William Murphy, but at the same time, you can get down with Lil Boosie? You know what I'm saying?
One thing that I've always said is, number 1, lying and never save nobody. And number 2, like I said, I always want to be consistent in everything that I am and everything that I do. And when you start putting on, that's when everything becomes an act. That's when you lose the authenticity of who you are and what you do. The reason why people believe me is because I've always been real, And I think that there is an appropriate balance of, understanding your influence, understanding that everything is not necessarily appropriate to be displayed, so to speak. But at the same time, I think it's important that people know who you are authentically, because you're not called to everybody.
It's true.
A lot of times we think that, you know, we have to do X, Y, Z to appease the masses. When in all actuality, you're not called to everybody, you know. And I know, and I'm pretty confident in who I'm called to. So I know that there's a group of people who see me, that understand me, that relate to me, that will be like, oh yeah, I get it. You know what I'm saying? There's a group of people that's like, she too much for me. She's la la la, you know.
That ain't for you.
They're not for me, you know. So I think that the more people really get a hold of that, they'll understand there are people that specifically need to connect with your story, and they can't connect with what they don't know. You know, so I think that it's important to share, you know, certain parts of you so that people, you know, can genuinely be inspired, their lives can genuinely be changed, and they can also see if she started here and got there, you know, I can too.
Good, good. How we look on time?
We got 11 minutes left on this first call.
Okay, perfect. So what's next for J Renee? I know that may be a very difficult question to answer, or it may not be. Where do you see yourself going? So it seems that you've always kind of planned that next step. Do you already have things in the works? You know, what does the future, 5, 10 years look like for you?
So the interesting thing is, I do always have the future planned, but I'm in probably the most unplanned space in my life right now. One of the greatest lessons that I've learned, and I'm still learning, is the balance of strategy, vision, planning, and trusting God.
That's a battle.
It is a true battle. And I'm such a strategist, like I enjoy like, I need to get to 697. How can I figure out what this, you know, like I feel like the ultimate superwoman when I accomplish things. And I mean this in the most humble way possible, but there's not too many things that I've set out to do that I haven't accomplished. However, I've done them in my strategy, my planning, and my timing. And now, you know, at almost 29 years old, I'm looking like, dang, like I'm young. I forgot, you know, I'm young. You know, so I'm in a place in my life where I'm still moving, but I'm also like, okay, now I get it. There has to be a balance of, you know, trusting God and also not rushing things. You know, I saw a post last night that said, Beyonce rehearsed for 8 months for a show that only lasted for 2 hours. Remember that next time you feel like something's not happening fast enough in your business. And I feel like I've been because I felt like I could do it, my foot has been on the gas. And I've zoomed past so many moments in my life because my foot was on the gas trying to accomplish. So now I'm at a place where, you know, I really want to enjoy things. I really want to take advantage of the fact that, you know, I'm not old. But, you know, business-wise, of course, I'm still moving. There are a lot of great things coming from the Visionary Academy. I'm actually in the process of launching a clothing line, which I haven't announced that yet, but you know, it's a podcast exclusive.
You heard it here first.
But that's the next major move for me. I currently retail products from other vendors, but I am going 100% design, manufacturing. So that's my next big business thing. Oh. I have a time frame, but if God says otherwise, cool.
Trust in Him.
Hashtag trust God.
Okay. You know? So I have a marker over there somewhere, but what we're gonna do is I want you to think about one word or one thought that prevents people from taking action on their dreams. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna blow up a balloon. You're gonna write that one word or that one thought, and then we're gonna pop it so we can take the air out of all of that nonsense. So I'll be right back. Let me get this. Make sure. I'm not the greatest balloon blower, but I'll make it work.
I can't tell you the last time I had to blow a balloon. Look at those athletic ones.
Man. Ugh. There you go.
That's a beautiful sound.
So excuses, all right? So excuses are tools. No, I'm not gonna go on that. But yeah, so we're gonna take the air out of us making excuses, and we're going to So they're gone. No more excuses.
No more
No more
excuses.
So J Renee, tell people where they can find you, shop with you, all that good stuff.
I am on Instagram at All Things J Renee, Twitter All Things J Renee, Facebook.com/allthingsjrenee. If you follow the hub, that'll get you to everything else. Check me out.
What about your book?
My book, True Confessions of a Visionary, is available on Amazon. It also has an accompanying vision book, which is a year-long guide to holding you accountable for changing your life.
That's right.
Both available on Amazon. True Confessions of a Visionary and the Vision book.
Go get it
Today.
today. All set. Cool deal.